Just to remind you one more time, although you know it from the point of registration, we are going to record this series, and apart the first half of each day will become an informative, interesting video that we will be sharing and promoting afterwards. So we really hope that you do not mind appearing on this video, and if this is something completely contradicting your values or your comfort zone, of course you can black off your screen. But we will be really happy if everybody in this process tries to stay connected also with their video, because this creates in this digital time at least some feeling of being connected, being together, and being in the same space. Also, I'm very happy to tell you that we have an amazing graphic recorder, Olaja, with us. Hi, who will be taking visual notes throughout the talk and will be sharing them with us in the end. So today, when ID Talks Digital, we are really lucky to get our first speaker with us, Michele Di Paola, a youth worker since the beginning of youth work times, so from last century on, computer nerd and author of really brilliant blog, but also somebody who is behind, who has about 10 years behind his shoulders of doing digital youth work promotion, working with media, working on trainer and youth worker competence models for digital competence and recognition, and somebody who has facilitated a number of international educational projects to build up digital competencies of youth workers and trainers. So Michele, welcome and thank you very much for accepting our invitation to join the series. Now I pass you the floor.
Yes, thank you, Anna. Hello, everybody. It's really me in that presentation you were talking about. Wow. uh, what to say? I'm very happy and glad to be here. So also thanks to Salto ID for inviting me. I want to discuss with you a little bit what we mean when we talk about inclusion in online environment, and how to approach, maybe more in general, the topic of designing online activities, of using online environments, and so on and so on. As Anna mentioned already, is something which basically did not exist as a concept until maybe 5-6 years ago. But now in the last few years, this idea and the methodologies connected to this idea developed a lot of interesting theories, point of views, tools to be used, and so on. So there'll be also a chance to go briefly and quickly through some of them. To help me and to help you maybe following what I'm saying, I have a few slides which I prepared, and I want to share my screen to make you see them. I promise it will not be boring, and not a lot of text on the slides, just a way to, oh, this is the last one, just a way to fix some concept while we are discussing them. So I would, in a moment, share my screen, and let's start for real with this. Okay, let's see if I can. Yes. Here we are. I guess you can see it. Can you? Perfect. First of all, talking about online youth activities, inclusive, there are two words here that should worry a bit everybody interested in this topic. So online youth activities, what are they? How do we define this topic. And inclusion, well, you should know a lot, maybe more than me, probably a lot more than me about inclusion, but still, considering inclusion in the online environment probably has some differences. Uh, so just to start involving you a little bit, you will have chances to discuss and ask questions later, but to start involving you, I would ask you simple and kind of normal task in these kind of events, which is to reach to this website, www.menti.com, enter the code you see there, 6173333, and answer the first question there, which is, please tell us more about you. Which is your profile, what you do in your life? Are you a youth worker, a trainer, a NGO officer, or whatever? And also, where are you now? Where are you connecting from? So that we can have a little bit of mapping of participants and understand better who's who. So www.menti.com, and the code to enter is 6173333. And I will stop the sharing now and go there and see if we have already some answers popping up. Can you do it right now? Are you doing it right now? Very good. Okay. There are a lot of different places you are connecting from. Wow, so Italian. Hi, fellow Italian. And many different profiles, but quite some of you are active, I would say, in youth work and training, some students researching maybe these very topics, and officers from organizations and agencies, project managers, really, I would say all over Europe and more, from Finland to Turkey and even more. So while you write down and finish to write down here, I would give you a bit of an overview of what's happening in the next few minutes. Of course, the time is limited, so my task here is to give you some insight and maybe some provocative inspiration about these two main topics that I already exposed, online youth activities and inclusion. Also some practical tips and elements that you should maybe take more into account, as this is one of the requests that you as participant sent us while applying for this first ID talk. I will also refer to a couple of interesting publications. I will show them, where you can find even more information, insight, links, materials to go deeper into the topic. And then, of course, you can always reach out to me. I have a blog at dpaola.me. I will then share my address, and there is an email that feel free to use for any kind of question and whatsoever. While the last boxes are moving, I would now pass over to the next question that I have ready for you here. So there is a next question which talking about inclusion in digital environments is exactly this one. Now, I'm asking you to write down in the three little boxes that should appear 3 words to define inclusion in online activities, in your opinion, in your experience, in your idea, whatever. Just not long sentences, please try to use keywords so that it's easier for everybody to understand what are we talking about here. What's inclusion in online youth activities, in your opinion? You have up to 3 words to define it. Well, a lot of words are coming, but we already have 2 big words, meaning that many people are writing the same: accessibility, diversity, flexibility, equality, and then a lot of other, many more other topics: availability for hardware, access to the internet, no digital divide, connect, justice, but also creativity, being open-minded, everyone is welcome, participation, respect, interaction, and also difficult to realize, again, needs creativity, challenging, something to discuss, and so on and so on. They're still coming. Respect is getting bigger. Creativity is getting bigger. Equality is getting bigger. Accessibility seems to be still the biggest one, and diversity, close enough. Okay. Okay, I guess I can close the sharing. If you still have to write your words down, please do it. Maybe we will get back there later on. But I want now to go back to my slides and go on with this little talk we are doing. All right. So I would start from this element, which is clearly appearing also in the words you were sharing. That online, everything is connected, should be connected, have to be connected, but not everybody can be connected, is connected. So we have this problem of digital divide, which is, again, clearly appearing in your words. And we have a lot of other issues simply related to the fact that devices, connections are not designed to be inclusive instrument per se, and also the fact of owning, having access to connections and devices can also be a matter of inequality for quite many people. I will share now a personal experience. In my country, Italy, we had a strong coronavirus lockdown already since the beginning of March. So many months during spring and summer were spent in lockdown. And so it was clearly visible the amount, for instance, of youngsters which could not attend to online lessons, measured in more or less 10, 15%, which is a lot, a lot of students not being allowed to get what is constitutionally granted as their right, so school. First element, anyway, online, everything is connected, but not everybody. So we have a problem of bringing people there, of connecting people to the connections, of facilitating the access to this part of the world of today. And the second aspect that I want to underline, which is to me almost as relevant as this one, is the fact that while online, everything is visual. We have an online experience which is mostly based on things that we look at. Screens, mobile devices, screen, tablet screen, but it's always watching. But maybe this does not work well for everybody. Huh? We should worry about inclusion. We are questioning inclusion, so we should start to question exactly the fact that online everything should be visual. And we should find a way to build up activities, to design activities around this topic and try to find workaround around this topic. Of course, it's kind of difficult because we are now staring at the screen, but creativity and fantasy do not miss in the youth work field. So I guess this can be done, and I will share with you a bit of experience and topics on how this could be done. So before going even deeper, as I said, I want to share also this very interesting and relevant presentation. This is the first, publication. This is the first one, digitalization and youth work, created by the Verke agency in Finland and the National Youth Work Center of Estonia last year. It's available for free online on Verke website, verke.org. And you can also ask them to send you paper copies. It's in English, which is always good because reading Finnish, if you're not a Finnish, can be difficult. And it's really interesting since it covers a very wide range of aspects in digitalization of youth work. One chapter is dedicated to equality, and there you can find some first insight. One very interesting insight, which also comes back in the other publication, which is this one, from the youth partnership between the European Commission and the Council of Europe. This research study, Social Inclusion, Digitalization and Young People, is dated April 2020, so it's really, really fresh. And I guess Salto Inclusion and Diversity was also included in somehow in creating this research. Draft because the final graphic layout is not being approved already, but it's basically completed. So you can, again, download it for free from the Council of Europe website. Here also we find an interesting question that maybe some of you has noticed while watching the docudrama on Netflix, The Social Dilemma, which reignited suddenly the debate of the effects of social media on youngsters, on education, and so on. Yeah. One first fact is that the technology we are using is not designed for being inclusive. This is really missing from the beginning. It seems that nobody is really taking care of embedding inclusion and the consideration of diversity in the technology we use. Yes, there are external tools. Yes, there are platforms that can help us, but technology itself is not really considering these as important aspects. And even more, the people doing, creating, inventing this technology, I don't think there is enough diversity there. If some of you has already watched this documentary, The Social Dilemma, you will realize that all the people which are there in the interviews, which are supposed to be the good guys, not the ones which went away from the tech brands providing social media and meanwhile trying to, at least in their interpretation, suck attention of youngsters to sell them advertisement. All these good guys were, mostly all of them, well, all of them were young males, mostly white, all of them in their 30s. Which kind of diversity could a group like this bring to the table of designing inclusive platforms and inclusive technologies? So once again, we have a problem of education, of creation of technology, and we are not there. We as youth workers are not there. We should be there to influence this process. How we can then try to find a way ourselves to inclusion in our practices? Well, again, as I said, I will share a few tips and then we can, of course, open up a discussion. When we talk about inclusion in practice, we have to take into account many factors. As we said, there is a problem of digital divide, and digital divide is something which is quite difficult to be solved by our everyday youth work, because deals with infrastructures, and infrastructures, networks, broadband connections are something which is field for policies. But then this is interesting. This means that infrastructure should be now more than ever part of youth policies. And this would help us to remind as youth workers the political role of our job, which is at least advocating for this kind of support of the youth field. We should really demand, as we were saying in the 90s of last century, one head, one access. We were campaigning as digital activists for allowing everybody to be online in a moment where online was starting to be the new thing. Now maybe it's clearer after many decades why it's important that everybody could have access to the network, to technology. So policies should help us in providing inclusion, but also we could do something more and something better to provide a better inclusion while we design online activities. Well, we all know that online activities, for instance, are based on platforms like Zoom, which is now hosting and allowing us to meet. And these platforms are not really, as we said, designed to allow inclusion, but something can be done. So for instance, a first practical tool and a first practical tip is that it's not mandatory to have a computer or a smartphone or a tablet to connect on Zoom or to connect to any other video conferencing platform. A dumb phone, a normal voice phone, could be used as well. And I don't know how many of you had this experience or even knew about it. But when you create, for instance, a meeting in Zoom, you get also the possibility to have people connected by the phone. And Zoom offers many national numbers in many countries. So it shouldn't be even an international phone call, which is expensive. So we should reach with this kind of activities using online platforms, also youngsters which are not now owning devices and connections. And then phone is always working anyway as such. So we can easily and simply call people and talk to people, which is something that maybe we forget about in these super digital times. Also, all generation phones can receive short messages, SMS. So this means that we could organize activities in the open, in mobility, reaching out to youngsters with some messages, even though they are not connected and not using last cutting edge technology online. More, language can be a big barrier and a matter of inclusion. Translation has always been a relevant topic in youth activities on a European field, but now translation can be provided, yes, maybe by artificial intelligence tools as Google Translate, which is still a bit clunky, but if you compare the possibility that this gives you compared to, I don't know, 15 years ago, it's kind of science fiction. Or some platform will allow you to put caption, subtitles for translation. So someone could be there translating and typing for all other people connected. And if you are in need, for instance, of translation in sign language, now more than ever it's easy to have someone connected, able to be watched by your participant, giving sign language translation while you speak in your group, to your group. And even more, yes, there is sometimes a need for specific hardware. Maybe you need a braille bar, which is a tool which can be connected by a USB to a computer and enables people to read in braille characters with their finger what is actually written on the screen. This hardware is there. And it's not super expensive and can be usually rented by NGO which are specifically dealing with different topics and different impairments. So another hint is how much did we consider as so far to try to get in touch with these providers of specific hardware to grant more inclusion to our activities. And once again, websites, especially if you use some device to read the text that is on the screen on other ways, voice readers, braille readers, then there is a need for a website to be strictly complaining to some rules and guidelines, accessibility guidelines. I don't know how many of your websites have been checked and how they score for accessibility, but this should start to be at least one of our concerns. How my website is able to be seen, read also by people, for instance, using specific hardware or anyway visually impaired and then need facilitation to have access to my content. Another topic, speech versus writing. I'm talking a lot, but talking it's maybe the easiest way to make me reach everybody, while maybe what I'm writing on the screen cannot be seen or read clearly by all participants for many different reasons. So also keeping a balance among what we write and what we decide to say, it's a very relevant topic while online, especially if we have online people which are not visually connected, but for instance, connected by the phone. They would need explanation, words to understand what's happening there. So another strategy can be use audio and video in a creative way. You can create podcast recordings and share the recordings, or simply send out the recordings, then everybody could hear them. Or if hearing them is a problem, you can create video, which has a more visually inclined preference for people. How to understand which is the best channel, of course, is always asking your participants. Find a way to send out maybe a poll, a survey before you create any kind of activity, to ask gently but openly, ask for special need in this case. Now, we are planning to do an online activity, so I'm wondering if you participants of this activity can access to my call on your phone or computer or just voice. You can read what's on my screen, or I should provide something different. Asking is easy and effective. And this is my favorite topic, then creativity in designing activities is what should be more relevant for us. When we are online, we cannot simply move what we were doing in the youth club inside a video conference call. Things have to be different. Times are shorter. Attention span is shorter. We are doing now here a 20 minutes talk, not a 2-hour talk, as it can happen in school. Also, environments are different. Also, the use of space is different. So a lot of tools that we are used as youth workers to rely upon are simply not there anymore. But there are others which need to be explored. We don't have post-it stickers and posters to write upon, but we have online whiteboards that can be shared and become a support for a participant to share their thoughts while they are connecting each from their home. And once again, maybe someone will not be able to use this. So we have to be creative and find a way to have everybody included also while proposing this kind of technology. For instance, writing in a chat and then someone else would transcribe what's coming there, or having a phone call and being you the one which types what someone else is saying, and so and so and so. Then I want to go a bit on the top of this, on the topic of diversity. Again, giving you some practice tips and tricks that then we can discuss and maybe go deeper into. Well, diversity is a super wide concept, no? Starts from cultures and then deals with identities, body, gender, and so on and so on and so on. Since we are talking about being connected, we should always take into account there is diversity also in the way we accept to be connected. And we are seeing it even now in this small group of people interested in this talk. Uh, Not everybody is showing their face on the camera, and we should consider this is perfectly fine. It's not mandatory. Can be a cultural issue, can be another kind of issue, but showing yourself in your camera probably is not the only way to take part in an online activity. And then we have to find a way to deal with this. For instance, there are some camera applications that you can add to your software, which allow your participant to create their own avatar, their own different face, their own different background. So you can maybe include the creation of these faces, of these avatars, of this picture that you put there instead of your face as a part of the activities. Let's get to know each other in this way. Let's create everybody a different picture, a different avatar to put there, which will represent us during the activity, even if I don't want to show my actual face. Also, we can face simpler, maybe silly, but still relevant problems like showing your home in the camera. I was in touch with a lot of youngsters during these few last months of lockdown in Italy, which were keeping the cameras off because they didn't want to show the place where they were living, because they would feel some kind of judgment, because they would fear the comparison with other houses. And this is also a topic that while online, we should allow to be there and we should kind of embrace. So once again, creating together the appearance that you decide to have while online can be a way altogether to overcome these kind of problems. Being online, of course, touches gender and identity uh, in a number of ways. Some of them are anyway the same as we always found in presence activities. How do I refer to a participant if I have a male name and then I meet a female face, for instance? Uh, Nowadays, the network is helping us, providing, for instance, uh, what is becoming a kind of a trend on many social media, where people are declaring already the pronouns they want to be used with them. In many uh, online profiles, you will find, for instance, in mine, Michele di Paola, he/him. It's an easy way to declare your identity and the identity you want people to use with you. But then again, it's not so easy for everybody to declare your identity and your gender and your sexual identity. So this can be, once again, topic of some specific activity to try to put all participants on the same page. And from one side, there are people which are showing maybe a lot, maybe too much of themselves while online, and others which are fearful of sharing their image or their face or anything about them. The concept of oops, sorry, the concept of digital reputation. So what's there, what's online, talking about me, should be a concept we should share some knowledge about. You need to be more attentive than normally when you are online and you need to put your face somewhere, show your picture somewhere, declare your identity and gender somewhere. Digital reputation, it's important because online everything stays. It's kind of silly using Latin proverbs to explain nowadays internet, but scripta manent, uh, written things last forever. It's now in the online times more relevant than it has ever been before. And we should be able to offer different approaches to learning in the different experiences that we are offering. Exactly for the fact that being online calls for visual approach, we should really put attention on offering other kind of experiences. It's not mandatory to be all the time all together watching in the camera. We can connect all together, receive a task, and then take everybody your time at home to fulfill your task and then meet again. And in this way, probably you will be able to allow people to come up with their real talents, no matter what. Being online, being an online activity doesn't mean being all the time, all together online. And this is an interesting approach to open up to more diverse methodologies and ways. I'm almost finished, but what we need to learn, what we need to learn in order to achieve these kind of attitudes, which are the competencies. Probably you are familiar with the youth workers competence models created by Salto, the Resource Center dealing with research and training. I am now in the process of reviewing this competence model to enlighten the digital dimension of these competencies as well. I want to put here a sentence from the European Commission, which looks particularly relevant to me in this field. Being digitally competent is more than being able to use the last smartphone or the last computer software. It is about being able to use such digital technologies in a critical, in a collaborative, in a creative way. Also, this helps us to clean up this idea of digital natives, which is affecting our field since a few years as a kind of disease, I would say. There's no such thing as digital natives, let me say it openly. It's not possible that since someone is born in a time in which devices are spread around, then they learn about it by osmosis. It doesn't work like this. You don't learn about something just because you sit close to a tablet. Of course, youngsters, young people are quickly able to learn how to consume experiences using devices and online tools. They see you pushing some icons on your phone and they know and they learn that these icons are the ones to be pushed to achieve some result. But there is no attention whatsoever to what's happening behind, even less about how you should behave in order to include all your friends and all your peer groups. So youth worker also in this have a very important, very relevant role. They can be the one which are quickly learning which keys to push to activate something, but we are the one which should be there sitting close to them to ask some question about the keys they push. I put it simple to make it more understandable, but it's our responsibility to question the technology that youngsters are using, because they maybe have more experience in using technology, but we are the one which have more experience about the real question to ask, because that's what education is about, being there. So I completely lost track of time, of course, as every time I'm speaking, but I guess I'm almost there. Anna can nod or not if it's true. Yes. So this is really the last thing I wanted to share with you. It's a document by the Commission of 3 years ago already. And now I guess after this very, I know, short and very fast run through some practical tips and some highlights that we need all and always to keep in mind about digital divide from one side and the visual approach to be possibly avoided or integrated on the other side. Uh, I would say that now it's it's your time. I will soon pass the floor to Anna, which will facilitate the process from now on to gather some question, intervention, and then more to find a way to go even deeper in this topic of discussion. Meanwhile, as I said, down there you find the address of my blog, www.dpaola.me, and my email. Really feel free to drop a line, ask for whatever you want to ask, and have a read on the post there and comments. It's really materials that I share because as a youth worker, I know that sometimes it's difficult to find someone which speaks your own language, especially in this technical field as in online and digital environments. So it's really a place where I would like and I invite conversation on sharing about what we do to happen. Uh, so yeah, thank you for your attention, and I will now pass the floor to Anna to understand what's happening now with you.
Thank you very much, Michele. It's been extremely interesting, inspiring, and I think for everybody there was something new that we discovered or some questions that came to our mind. I was wondering if we already have some questions or reactions in the chat. Maria, do we have something on the ground that we could bring back to Michele right now before going into small groups?
Hi, everyone. There is not a question. There are a lot of thanks. Thank you, Michele, for this wonderful presentation. There is also one interesting link that Tony left us in the chat about digitalization and youth work at the moment. Let's see. I have also write down the social media accounts that we're using in Salto IND so that you can follow us there to be informed about the next events. Let's see some new messages. Ellen, if I pronounce the name correct, writes, thanks a lot. Michele, you mentioned the need to assess websites based on inclusivity criteria, but is there any tool already existing that can be used? So that's one question.
Yes, I will answer now. So yes, there are, of course. There even are guidelines that on the national levels, every government should or could have to explain what accessibility of website means in their specific context. In Italy, for instance, we've been having a law like this since at least 5 or 6 years. If you use the most common platforms for blogging or for managing your online content, as for instance, I don't know, WordPress, there is a number of plugins that you can add to your website, and that they can both assess your blog and see how it scores in terms of accessibility and help you improve the accessibility. On my website, I am using one which on the backstage gives me feedback on how accessible are the pages I create. For instance, if I put a picture, I should always provide what is an alternative description written down in text. Because if you are using one of the hardware that I mentioned, which are able to read the page, the image cannot be read. But if you provide a line or two of explanation, then the person watching the website could understand anyway what's in the picture. Or, for instance, you need a more readable font. because you have dyslexia or whatever, there should be a possibility to change the font, to increase the size or change the contrast. And all of these are tasks that these accessibility plugins could help you to achieve really in a simple way. Yeah, so definitely, yes, there are tools to assess and there are tools to improve the accessibility of the website. Of course, if you are using one of the most common systems to build up your website, you will find even more tools to support it.
Thank you very much, Michele. This is not the last moment that we can ask questions and get some reactions as well. In a moment, Maria will send everybody to small groups to talk a little bit, to share impressions of what you just heard, maybe share your personal stories, because we believe there is so much potential within our participants and audience, also so much interesting information that you can bring back to the plenary. So I will now share my screen with this little assignment that we have for you. So we would like to ask you in 15 minutes to speak to each other, having in your focus what you just heard from Michele, and try to bring back from your group either a question that you still have open and that you would like to address to Michele or generally to the kind of universe, or maybe bring back an insight or a story from your group that you think is worth mentioning in the light of digitalization, inclusion, and diversity. So in a moment, the rooms will be open and I will be traveling around the group. So if you need any kind of digital support or to rephrase the task, the assignment for you, feel free. In the meantime, maybe you make a screenshot of this shared screen, because when you will be split into smaller groups, you will probably not see this shared screen anymore. So Maria, once we have the groups ready, we can go for 15 minutes and see you soon back here.
Yes, the rooms are ready, so slowly you will be directed there.
I'm waiting for your questions, so please.
Bring back very quick, either one reaction, insight, or a short question to our speaker, so we could somehow have a little interaction with each other and hear from your groups. And then maybe a not very non-formal education friendly way to do it, but I will just kind of call up to the number of the group and let's bring it from there. So let's start maybe with group number one, room number one. What is your question? You can unmute yourself, one of you from the group, and just say it instead of writing it. Yes.
Yes, how to integrate this accessibility and inclusivity into our activities so that there's no potential to sort of treat these as separate things, as separate projects that deserve separate funding, but rather to make the message clear that no, this needs to be built into all of our activities.
Thank you. Michele?
I'm muted. Of course, it's a very big question. From our side, well, it's fine, Aliana, don't worry. From our side, as youth workers, or as trainers, people who design these activities, I would say that we should put particular attention on how the different exercises, the different really things that you propose to your groups are shaped. So always question, would everybody be able to fulfill this task? What if this task will be given to someone which has a poor internet connection or no possibility to be online with a camera or. So this is a kind of benchmark that we should always try to do. And then, of course, there is a bigger level. So all the activities inside the program we are referring to now, Erasmus Plus or the next generation one, which will come sooner or later, should make as such an effort to underline the fact that inclusion, even more in online environment, should be tackled by the activities. A first attempt of giving some more focus on this topic were this extraordinary call that was issued with the deadline of 29th of October, if I'm right, which was exactly addressing online activities as a specific kind of activities to be funded. It's important to keep in mind that these kind of activities also need some specific resources. So it's also a matter of advocacy. It's a matter of let our voice heard where these kind of decisions are taken. Because, for instance, we were discussing before that at a certain moment this summer, the Commission said it's fine to move the activities online, but then there will be budget cuts because, of course, we will not spend money in travel and accommodation, which is true and right. But designing an online activities, as we started to understand now, could cost really a lot of money in terms of preparation, in terms of tools that you have to provide. So what you save from one side, you can spend maybe on the other side. And this should be also something to a bit advocate for.
I have seen in our chat box that 3 of the other groups have put their questions there, and there is a striking similarity between them. Everybody wants to know how to make these activities motivating and attractive. Yeah, so it's not only informative, it's not only useful, but it's catchy, it's interesting and motivating. So maybe you have some tips for that.
Yeah, and inclusive also, as group
and
number
inclusive,
5
of
especially
course.
underlines. Yes. Well, I'm experimenting in the last couple of years the use of video games in non-formal educational activities. Dealing with video games and youth workers can be a tricky relationship because normally video games are accused to be the worst evil in the world by a lot of people, and sometimes they are. But some other times it can really be an interesting and powerful tools to click, to gain the attention of youngsters to what you are proposing. Yes. Tomorrow morning I will be connected to the University of Bologna, where I want to play a game with the students of one course there. It's a easy video game that costs more or less 10 euros, which is called Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. And it's about a bomb. Someone is laughing because they know that. It's about a bomb. You have a suitcase, which is actually a bomb, and you have to dismantle the bomb, but you don't have any instructions, and the instructions are in the hands of someone else, which cannot see the bomb. So it's easily playable online. I have the bomb on my screen, and you have the manual on your computer, and you have to tell me what to do, and I have to try to help you explaining how the bomb looks like. So these kind of activities, which are commercial video games, no specific tools or nothing, can be surely a way to, let's say, spice up the offer inside our digital activities. And there are a number of games lately that can be used in this way. And then also, I guess this is also a space for more projects to pop up. There was a season where many projects developed board games or card games. And I guess now we should be a season where projects of European cooperation start to develop online tools, video games or others, to better fit our purposes. Because as I said in the beginning, these tools we are using are really not designed to fit our purposes. We are trying to stretch them to cover our needs, which is good. We are creative, we are versatile, but can also try to design something on our own, maybe, and put it as a topic, as an intellectual output of some project, and maybe add some more tools to be used in this context. The name of the game I will write in the chat is Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. Yeah, great. Maria already put the link there.
Oh, and maybe to continue what you were saying, but also very much in line with the comments and questions of our participants here in the chat, where to find these tools? Are there any sources that you would recommend? A place maybe where there is a compilation of this kind of methods or platforms that are safe and somehow use work proven to be using them?
Well, use work proven could be interesting to build up this kind of of mechanism of assessing digital tools by youth workers. I don't think there is something similar so far, but instead there is a huge number of websites, often outcomes, intellectual output of projects, which are providing lists of tools. Someone are some of them are popping up now in the chat with the links, and then of course there are the bigger guns, let's say, like the TED conference talks, in which you have also expert explaining which tools are suitable for which uses. In our sector, there is the Tools for Learning website, always created by Salto. Also, the last edition of the tool fairs are starting to address digital tools as tools to be taken into account by youth workers. Great, Marinella shared the Padlet by Dan Moxon, which is also one of the authors of the research I was presenting before. During the lockdown, it did a very interesting job of collecting of the tools that were proposed and reviewed by the community of youth workers Europe-wide. So that link of Padlet, it's very interesting. And Padlet itself is a very interesting tool. It's a kind of board where you can move cards and stick stuff on the wall. And so it can resemble in a way a setting of our common non-formal education activities. And there is another question from room 3.
So room 3 is our last room that that decided to go 2 in 1. So maybe to try to somehow summarize as well, with a special attention to young people with special needs, mental needs.
Yeah, special need, mental needs. But from one side, digital environments can be a safer place in a way, because the lack of contact, the lack of direct interaction for some people can leave them in a better situation. If your situation makes problematic for you to deal with people entering your space, in this way, nobody will ever enter your space, your physical space, I mean. On the other side, digital tools often call for an extended use. And so some kind of condition can fall prey of this mechanism of keeping people using the tools. And so I would say it could be useful, if possible, to have someone sitting closer or beside the person we are trying to involve with this tool, or anyway, at least be clear about the timing of the sessions. So we are using this tool for 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever is needed, but then you need to close it and shut it down and come back and talk to us and be present where we are discussing together. These are 2 small tips, but yeah, we don't have time to go deeper into this, but yes, it's relevant, and we need to put attention on especially these 2 factors. So, attention of not having people sucked inside the use of tools, which is also a problem in general, but in this specific case can be even more problematic. And on the other side, let's try to understand if this can be also a strength point. Having a more mediate kind of connection to other people can help at least some situation.
Yeah, thank you very much. There are more and more questions coming in. Unfortunately, we don't have so much time to address each one of them separately. There is a question about formal education setting. I believe a lot of what has been said in our professional jargon for youth workers could be somehow also translated and modified and adjusted in a formal education setting. We will need to start closing our today's ID talk soon. Before you leave, and you are starting to slowly leave, it seems, please leave one word about your impressions of today. We are going to prepare a beautiful world cloud after it. So before you leave, please make sure you put in a general chat one word that describes or represents how it was for you today. But this is not the end yet. And now I'm really excited to pass the floor to Olaja, our graphic recorder, graphic facilitator, who has something interesting and insightful to share with us. Olaja, you have the whole attention and floor.
Thank you very much. I will pin the picture. This is so far the draft of today's input. There has been so many things that were so important, so meaningful. And we were discussing also in the team that it made us realize many different aspects. And just in general, we had this discussion about the importance of the digital divide that has been, it has disappeared for some reason. Of course, give me a second. My iPad is like, nah, you cannot mirror anymore. Just stuck.
That's technology, no?
Yeah.
People going around saying that science,
Okay.
computer science is an exact science are.
And
There
exactly in the moment when we talked about digital divide.
Exactly. It's like, that's what you're talking about. So yeah, this digital divide that became more obvious than ever during the quarantine times, when the need for digital tools became super obvious. And then we had this idea of, all right, technology might not always encourage this inclusion. So what can we as youth work practitioners or teachers, educators, what can we do about it? How can we assure that inclusion exists in the activities we deliver, basically? So that's where Michele introduced us to a set of tips and tricks, both on the field of inclusion and also diversity. And he also provided us with two very useful resources by two institutions that are also available in the links. You have it on the corner on the left with resources. And yes, the questions and answers is already being started, but I will edit based on the chat and all these discussions that I'm seeing here on the site. So it has been a lot, and I will be redoing this, so you will receive after a few days a full complete recording that will wrap up today's session.
Thank you very much, Olaja, and thank you everybody for your contribution, for your participation.